Hands up! Drop the tool!
Hold up. Officer, let me explain.
You're on private property. I don't care about your story. You're under arrest.
It's a false arrest, white man. I'm the chief city zoning administrator and you just assaulted me on the job. See you in court.
It starts with a calm, quiet neighborhood. A black man stands at a property line, wearing a simple polo and safety vest, adjusting a surveying tool. He's working, methodical, professional, focused, and yet within seconds, a rookie officer storms in like he's walking into an active crime scene. His body cam catches everything: the panic, the shouting, the weapon-drawn stance over a surveying tripod. The man tries to speak, tries to explain, but the rookie refuses to listen. He arrests him for trespassing. He threatens him. He shoves him. But the cop made one fatal mistake, because the man he put his hands on isn't a criminal. He's the chief city zoning administrator, legally authorized to be there. And what happens next will destroy the officer's career and cost the homeowner $850,000. Before we continue, where are you watching from? If this is your first time here, please hit that subscribe button. Stories like these need to be shared, and your support helps us bring more truth to light.
Westbrook Heights, a tree-lined suburban neighborhood in Montgomery County, Maryland, where property values hover around $700,000, and residents pride themselves on maintaining perfectly manicured lawns and strictly enforced homeowner association rules. The kind of neighborhood where a car parked facing the wrong direction generates complaints, and where anything out of the ordinary triggers immediate suspicion. It was 10:35 a.m. on a Tuesday morning in late April. The weather was perfect: 68 degrees, light breeze, clear blue sky. The kind of spring day where construction crews and municipal workers take advantage of ideal conditions to complete outdoor projects before summer heat makes the work unbearable. Darnell Matthews had been with the Montgomery County Department of Planning and Zoning for 14 years. At 48 years old, he held the position of Chief City Zoning Administrator, a senior-level position requiring a master's degree in urban planning, extensive knowledge of municipal codes, and the authority to approve or deny permits, variances, and appeals that could make or break development projects worth millions of dollars. That morning, he was conducting a routine property survey for a city-approved street expansion project, Oakmont Drive, a residential street that had been on the county's infrastructure improvement plan for 3 years, was scheduled for widening to accommodate increased traffic flow and improve emergency vehicle access. The project had been approved by the county council, funded through a transportation bond, and vetted through every required public hearing and environmental review. Darnell's job was to verify exact property boundaries before construction began. He arrived at 10:15 a.m. in his county-issued vehicle, a white Ford F-150, with Montgomery County Planning and Zoning printed clearly on both doors. He wore his standard work uniform, navy blue polo shirt with the county seal embroidered on the chest, khaki work pants, steel-toed boots, and a bright yellow reflective safety vest with Zoning Administrator printed in large black letters across the back. He'd set up his surveying equipment at the property line between 2847 and 2851 Oakmont Drive, a tripod-mounted laser level used to establish elevation points and verify measurements against county records. This was technical work requiring precision. Every measurement had to be documented, photographed, and filed as part of the project's permanent record. He'd been working for about 15 minutes when he noticed movement at the house to his right, 2851 Oakmont Drive, owned by Rebecca Thornton, a 53-year-old real estate agent who lived in the neighborhood for 8 years. Rebecca had seen Darnell from her kitchen window, a black man, unfamiliar, standing at her property line with equipment she didn't recognize. And in her mind, shaped by years of implicit bias and neighborhood fear-mongering about property crime, she didn't see a city employee performing lawful duties. She saw a threat. She called 911. The call, later obtained through public records requests, was a master class in racially motivated false reporting.
There's a suspicious black man on my street measuring properties. I think he's planning break-ins. He's got some kind of device set up, like he's planning where to enter homes. Ma'am, is he attempting to enter any homes right now? Not yet, but he keeps looking at houses and writing things down. He's clearly casing the neighborhood. You need to send someone immediately before he robs us. Every element of that call was false. Darnell wasn't measuring properties for criminal purposes. He was conducting a government-mandated survey. He wasn't looking at houses. He was checking sight lines and elevation points. He wasn't writing things down suspiciously. He was completing official documentation required by law. But Rebecca Thornton's call, filtered through a dispatcher system and transmitted to patrol units, became suspicious person, possible trespassing, Oakmont Drive near the 2800 block. Officer Jason Whitmore responded. He was 23 years old, 6 months out of the academy, and on solo patrol for only his third week. His training evaluations had noted concerns about his tendency to escalate situations unnecessarily. But like many understaffed departments, Montgomery County PD had pushed him through to active duty despite reservations. Whitmore pulled up to the location at 10:33 a.m. His body cam was activated. The footage shows him exiting his vehicle and immediately adopting an aggressive posture, shoulder squared, right hand hovering near his service weapon, approach angle designed for confrontation rather than conversation. Darnell was bent over his tripod, adjusting the laser level's calibration. His back partially turned to the street. He heard the car door slam, but assumed it was a resident leaving for work. He didn't look up immediately. That's when Whitmore's voice cut through the quiet morning air. Hands up, drop the tool, now! Darnell straightened and turned, confusion evident on his face. He saw a young officer, weapon not drawn but hand positioned for quick access, aggressive stance, panicked expression. Hold up. Officer, let me explain. Whitmore stepped closer, cutting him off. You're on private property. I don't care about your story. You're under arrest. The body cam footage captures Darnell's expression perfectly. Not fear, not even anger yet, just absolute disbelief at the absurdity of what was happening. His voice remained calm, controlled, professional. This is a false arrest, white man. He slowly reached into his chest pocket, moving deliberately, carefully, the way people who understand police encounters learn to move, and pulled out a gold badge on a leather credential holder. He held it up, face level, clearly visible to both Whitmore and the body cam. I'm the Chief City Zoning Administrator for Montgomery County. This is my government-issued identification. I'm conducting a mandatory property assessment for a public street expansion project that's already been approved by the county council. And you just assaulted me while I was performing my official duties. See you in court. The moment should have ended there. A reasonable officer would have verified the credentials, apologized for the confusion, and left. But Officer Jason Whitmore wasn't trained in de-escalation. He was trained in compliance and control. And a black man, even one holding government credentials, refusing to immediately submit to his authority, registered in Whitmore's mind as a threat that needed to be neutralized. If an officer approached you like this while you were working, how would you react?
Officer Whitmore stared at the badge for approximately 3 seconds. The body cam footage shows him squinting, processing, his brain struggling to reconcile what he was seeing with what he'd assumed was happening. Then he said the words that would end his career. That could be fake. I'm taking you into custody until we verify your identity. Darnell's calm began to crack. Fake? You think I'm standing here in broad daylight with a county vehicle, county equipment, and county credentials committing some elaborate fraud? Call your supervisor. Right now. Whitmore ignored the request. Turn around. Hands behind your back. I'm not resisting, but I'm telling you this is unlawful detention of a government official performing mandated duties. You need to verify my credentials before you escalate this further. Whitmore grabbed Darnell's left arm. The body cam footage shows the sudden movement, the force applied, Darnell's body tensing in response to the unexpected contact. Don't touch me. Call your supervisor. Whitmore pulled Darnell's arm behind him with excessive force. Darnell instinctively pulled away, not to resist arrest, but because the angle was painful and the movement was violent. That natural defensive reaction gave Whitmore exactly what he needed. He's resisting! The body cam captures what happens next in brutal clarity. Whitmore swept Darnell's legs, forcing him to his knees on the concrete sidewalk. The impact was audible. Darnell grunted in pain. Whitmore pressed his knee into Darnell's back, wrenched both arms behind him at angles that strained his shoulders, and applied handcuffs with enough force that the metal bit into his wrists. Across the street, a doorbell camera at 2846 Oakman Drive captured the entire incident from a different angle. The footage shows clearly Darnell never made any aggressive movement. His hands remained visible throughout. His body language was non-threatening, and yet Officer Whitmore treated him like a violent criminal resisting arrest. "I'm performing a government-ordered survey." Darnell's voice carried pain and fury. "Call your supervisor. This is unlawful." Whitmore yanked him to his feet, gripping his arm hard enough to leave bruises that would be photographed hours later as evidence. "You can explain it at the station." Another officer arrived, Sergeant Linda Morrison, a 19-year veteran who'd been monitoring the radio traffic and decided to check on the rookie's first significant encounter. She pulled up, assessed the scene, and immediately recognized what Whitmore apparently couldn't: the county vehicle, the professional surveying equipment, and the official safety vest. "Whitmore, what's the situation?"
Subject was trespassing. Claimed to be a city employee, but couldn't provide proper ID. Darnell turned toward Morrison, his voice steady despite the handcuffs cutting into his wrists. "Sergeant, I did provide proper ID, my government badge and credentials. I'm Chief City Zoning Administrator Darnell Matthews. My information is in your dispatch system. This officer refused to verify my identity before placing me under arrest." Morrison's expression shifted. She walked over to Darnell's equipment, examined the county seals and identification numbers stamped on the surveying tools, checked the county vehicle registration visible through the windshield, and pulled out her radio. "Dispatch, can you run a check on Montgomery County employee Darnell Matthews, position City Zoning Administrator?" The response came back within 30 seconds. "Affirmative. Darnell Matthews, age 48, Chief City Zoning Administrator for Montgomery County Planning and Zoning, employee ID number MC7743. No warrants, no flags." Morrison turned to Whitmore, her voice tight with barely restrained anger. "Remove the handcuffs, now." Whitmore's face went pale. "But Sergeant, the 911 call said—" "I don't care what the call said. You just arrested a senior government official while he was performing his legal duties. Remove the handcuffs." The body cam footage captures the moment Whitmore realized he'd destroyed his career. His hands shook as he fumbled with his handcuff key. It took him 3 attempts to unlock them. When they finally clicked open, Darnell pulled his arms forward slowly, rubbing his wrists where angry red marks were already forming. Morrison addressed Darnell directly, her tone professional, but tinged with embarrassment. "Mr. Matthews, I apologize on behalf of the Montgomery County Police Department. This should not have happened." Darnell's response was measured, but firm. "Sergeant, with all due respect, an apology doesn't undo what just occurred. I was assaulted while performing my official duties. I was handcuffed on a public sidewalk despite providing proper identification. And I was treated like a criminal because someone made assumptions based on my race." He turned to Whitmore. "And you, officer, just made the worst mistake of your career, because I'm not just filing a complaint. I'm pursuing every legal remedy available to me. False arrest, assault, violation of civil rights, interference with government operations, and I have body cam footage, doorbell camera footage, and witnesses to support every single charge." Whitmore opened his mouth, but nothing came out. Morrison put a hand on his shoulder. "Don't say anything else. We're leaving. Now." They returned to their vehicles and left. Darnell stood on the sidewalk for several minutes, breathing deeply, processing what had just happened. Then he pulled out his phone and called his wife, an attorney with the ACLU. The conversation was brief. "Honey, I was just arrested while doing my job.
I need you to document everything and contact our civil rights team. This ends today.
Within 2 hours, the machinery of accountability began moving. Darnell's wife, attorney Jennifer Matthews, contacted the ACLU Maryland chapter, the Montgomery County Office of Internal Affairs, and a civil rights litigation firm that specialized in police misconduct cases. By that afternoon, formal complaints had been filed through 3 separate channels. But the real revelation came when investigators pulled the 911 call recording. Because what Rebecca Thornton had told the dispatcher wasn't just misleading, it was deliberately false in ways that revealed conscious racial bias. The full recording, obtained through Maryland Public Information Act request, told a damning story. "There's a suspicious black man on my street measuring properties. I think he's planning break-ins." The dispatcher had asked for more detail. "Can you describe what he's doing specifically?" "He's got equipment set up, like surveying equipment, and he keeps writing things down and looking at houses. He's clearly casing the neighborhood for robberies. I saw him looking through windows." That last claim, looking through windows, was a complete fabrication. The doorbell camera footage from multiple homes on the street proved Darnell never approached any windows, never looked into any homes, never did anything except work at the property line with his surveying equipment. Rebecca Thornton had lied, deliberately, to make Darnell sound more threatening, to ensure police would respond aggressively, to weaponize law enforcement against a black man whose presence in her neighborhood made her uncomfortable. The Montgomery County Police Department's internal investigation moved quickly. Whitmore's body cam footage was reviewed by supervisors, use of force specialists, and the department's civil rights compliance officer. Their findings were unanimous and devastating. Officer Whitmore had violated 7 separate department policies: failure to verify credentials before making arrest, excessive force during detention of non-resistant subject, failure to de-escalate encounter despite subject compliance, improper assessment of threat level, failure to call for supervisor when subject claimed official capacity, violation of protocols regarding detention of government employees, creating liability for department through negligent law enforcement. But the systemic problems ran deeper than one rookie's mistakes. The investigation revealed that Whitmore had never received training on how to recognize or verify government employee credentials. He'd never been taught that certain officials, zoning administrators, building inspectors, code enforcement officers, have legal authority to access properties without owner permission when performing official duties. His academic training had covered basic ID verification for driver's licenses and state-issued identification cards, but nothing in his curriculum addressed government badges, professional credentials, or the legal frameworks protecting officials performing mandated work. This wasn't just individual failure. This was institutional failure. A training gap that left officers unprepared for encounters with the very officials whose work kept the county functioning.
Failure to verify credentials before making arrest, excessive force during detention of non-resistant subject, failure to de-escalate encounter despite subject compliance, improper assessment of threat level, failure to call for supervisor when subject claimed official capacity, violation of protocols regarding detention of government employees, creating liability for department through negligent law enforcement. But the systemic problems ran deeper than one rookie's mistakes. The investigation revealed that Whitmore had never received training on how to recognize or verify government employee credentials. He'd never been taught that certain officials, zoning administrators, building inspectors, code enforcement officers, have legal authority to access properties without owner permission when performing official duties. His academy training had covered basic ID verification for driver's licenses and state-issued identification cards. But nothing in his curriculum addressed government badges, professional credentials, or the legal frameworks protecting officials performing mandated work. This wasn't just individual failure. This was institutional failure. a training gap that left officers unprepared for encounters with the very officials whose work kept the county functioning. The Training Division's own review confirmed this. Their report stated, "Current academy curriculum does not adequately prepare officers to recognize municipal authority or verify government employee credentials. This gap creates significant liability risk and potential for civil rights violations. Immediate curriculum revision required." 3 days after the incident, Darnell gave a detailed statement to internal affairs investigators. His account, corroborated by multiple video sources, painted a picture of an encounter that should never have escalated beyond a brief conversation. "I was doing my job. I had every legal right and professional obligation to be exactly where I was, doing exactly what I was doing. I wasn't trespassing. I wasn't committing any crime. I was performing work that serves the public interest. And yet I was treated like a criminal because a biased caller and an undertrained officer couldn't see past my race." The investigation also examined Rebecca Thornton's role. Maryland law makes filing false police reports a misdemeanor, punishable by up to 6 months in jail and a $500 fine. But proving intent is difficult. People make mistakes, misidentify situations, report things they believe to be true even when they're wrong. But the discrepancy between what Thornton told the 911 dispatcher and what actually happened was too significant to dismiss as mere misunderstanding. She'd claimed Darnell was looking through windows, an allegation with zero evidence. She'd characterized professional surveying equipment as tools for planning break-ins. She'd transformed lawful government work into a criminal conspiracy purely through her imagination and bias. Prosecutors reviewed the case and determined they had sufficient evidence to charge Thornton with filing a false police report and making false statements to emergency services. She was arrested 2 weeks later. The irony was not lost on anyone. The woman who'd weaponized 911 against a black government official was now facing criminal charges herself.
But the biggest revelation, the one that would ultimately cost Rebecca Thornton $850,000, came when investigators reviewed the property records for 2851 Oakmont Drive. Because Rebecca Thornton had filed an administrative appeal challenging the street expansion project, she had claimed the proposed widening would damage her property value, create noise issues, and fundamentally alter the neighborhood character. Her appeal had been scheduled for hearing before the county zoning board in 6 weeks. And the person with final administrative authority to recommend approval or denial of that appeal? Chief City Zoning Administrator Darnell Matthews. Should 911 callers be held accountable for false, racially motivated reports? The civil rights lawsuit was filed exactly 3 weeks after the arrest. Darnell Matthews v. Officer Jason Whitmore. Sergeant Linda Morrison for supervisory failure. Montgomery County Police Department, and Montgomery County Government. The complaint was comprehensive: false arrest, assault and battery, violation of Fourth Amendment rights, violation of 14th Amendment equal protection rights, intentional infliction of emotional distress, interference with government operations, municipal liability for inadequate training. But it was the attached evidence that made the case unbeatable. Bodycam footage showing the entire encounter. Doorbell camera footage from 3 different angles. The falsified 911 call recording. Whitmore's training records showing the gaps in his education. Internal affairs reports confirming policy violations. Medical documentation of Darnell's injuries. Bruised wrists, scraped knees, soft tissue damage to his shoulders. The county's attorneys took one look at the evidence and recommended immediate settlement negotiations. No trial, no prolonged discovery, no risk of a jury seeing that footage and awarding damages that could bankrupt the department. But before settlement talks could begin, Rebecca Thornton's property appeal hearing arrived on the county calendar. The hearing was scheduled for May 18th in the County Administrative Building's main conference room. It was a routine proceeding. Property owners had the right to appeal development projects they believed would harm their interests.
Thornton arrived with her attorney, a stack of property value assessments, and a presentation arguing why the street expansion should be denied or modified to avoid impacting her land. Darnell Matthews arrived with the body cam footage. The hearing was conducted by the County Zoning Board, a 5-member panel of appointed officials who reviewed appeals and made recommendations to the County Council. Thornton's attorney presented her case: property devaluation, loss of privacy, increased traffic noise, disruption to neighborhood character. Then it was time for the zoning administrator's response. Darnell stood, connected his laptop to the conference room display, and addressed the board with professional calm. Members of the board, before I address the technical merits of this appeal, I need to provide context about the appellant's conduct. Rebecca Thornton is not simply a concerned property owner exercising her legal rights. She is someone who has demonstrated a pattern of obstructing legitimate government operations through false accusations and racially motivated harassment.
He played the body cam footage, the entire incident, start to finish, in high-definition clarity. The board members watched in silence as Thornton's 911 call was played, as Whitmore's aggressive approach was shown, as Darnell's professional credentials were displayed and ignored, as he was forced to the ground and handcuffed for doing his job. When the footage ended, the room was silent. Darnell continued, "Miss Thornton called 911 and deliberately lied about my actions. She claimed I was looking through windows and casing homes for robbery. The video evidence proves these claims were completely fabricated. She weaponized law enforcement against me because my presence, a black man performing government work, made her uncomfortable. And now she's using the same administrative process I oversee to obstruct the very project I was surveying when she had me unlawfully arrested." He pulled up the project documentation. The Oakmont Drive expansion has been approved through every required channel. Environmental review completed. Public hearings conducted. Funding allocated. Construction timeline finalized. Miss Thornton attended 0 public meetings during the approval process. She filed 0 objections until after she successfully had me arrested for performing my duties. Her appeal is not based on legitimate concerns about the project's impact. It's retaliation. Thornton's attorney tried to object, but the board chair cut him off. "Ms. Thornton, do you dispute Administrator Matthews' characterization of the 911 call?" Rebecca Thornton's face was pale. She looked at her attorney, who gave her a slight nod. I made that call because I was concerned about suspicious activity in my neighborhood." "Suspicious activity?" Darnell's voice carried controlled anger. "You saw a black man with professional equipment and a government vehicle and decided he must be a criminal. That's not concern, that's racism. And it resulted in my assault, my unlawful arrest, and significant emotional and professional harm. And now you're asking this board to validate your obstruction by denying a project that serves the public interest." The board deliberated for exactly 12 minutes. Their decision was unanimous. Appeal denied. The Oakmont Drive expansion will proceed as approved. Furthermore, this board is referring Ms. Thornton's conduct to the county attorney's office for review regarding potential violations of administrative process integrity. Rebecca Thornton left the hearing in silence. She didn't know it yet, but that decision had just cost her $850,000. Should government officials be allowed to use body cam footage in property decisions?
Officer Jason Whitmore was terminated from the Montgomery County Police Department on June 2nd, exactly 39 days after the incident. The termination letter was detailed and unambiguous. Officer Whitmore's conduct on April 25th violated multiple department policies and created significant legal liability. His failure to verify credentials, use of excessive force against a non-resistant subject, and refusal to de-escalate despite clear evidence of the subject's legitimate authority demonstrate a fundamental inability to perform law enforcement duties in a manner consistent with constitutional requirements and community trust. Employment terminated immediately. Post-certification revoked. Whitmore's law enforcement career was over. His name entered the National Decertification Database, preventing him from ever working as a police officer in any state. At 23 years old, 6 months out of the academy, his chosen profession was closed to him forever. The civil rights lawsuit settled 4 months later. Montgomery County agreed to pay Darnell Matthews $275,000 in compensatory damages, cover all legal fees, issue a formal public apology, and implement comprehensive training reforms. The training reforms were extensive: mandatory instruction on recognizing government employee credentials, protocols for verifying official capacity before making arrests, enhanced de-escalation training, specifically addressing encounters with professionals performing lawful duties, implicit bias training with special focus on assumptions about people of color in professional roles, regular audits of officer encounters with government employees. But the largest financial consequence fell on Rebecca Thornton, because when the Oakmont Drive expansion proceeded as approved, it did exactly what street expansion projects do to adjacent properties. It changed everything.
I'm calling the police. You're not allowed to be on this property.
Ma'am, this is my property.
Don't lie to me. People like you don't live in this neighborhood. Put the tools down now.
You really should think before you speak. You call the police, tell them you just threatened the state attorney in his own front yard.
On a brilliant Saturday afternoon in Oakland's Lake Merritt Park, where families gather and the smell of grilled food drifts across manicured lawns, a cell phone camera captured an encounter that would become a flashpoint in America's ongoing conversation about race, public space, and who gets to decide who belongs. A white woman, later identified as Jennifer BBQ Becky Schulte, stood beside a park ranger's vehicle, pointing repeatedly at a black family cooking on a small charcoal grill near the shoreline. She didn't know their names. She didn't know they had a permit. She only saw people she believed didn't belong and called armed enforcement to remove them. But within hours, her 2-hour confrontation with the Smithson family would explode into a viral phenomenon that cost her career, her reputation, and became a case study in how white fragility weaponizes authority against black joy. Because the family she was screaming at wasn't breaking any rules. They had followed every regulation. They had done everything right. Her mistake didn't just expose her prejudice. It ignited a movement. Before we continue, where are you watching from? If this is your first time here, please hit that subscribe button. Stories like these need to be shared, and your support helps bring more truth to light.
The video begins shaky, then steadies. The frame captures Lake Merritt on April 29, 2018. It's 11:47 a.m. Temperature hovering around 68 degrees. The kind of California spring day where people emerge from their homes hungry for sunshine and community. In the lower right quadrant of the frame, the Smithson family. Javon Smithson, 38, a software engineer at a tech startup in San Francisco. His wife, Michelle, 36, a middle school science teacher. Their 2 children, Kayla, 8, and Marcus, 6, playing with a frisbee on the grass nearby. They've claimed a spot near the lake with a clear view of the water. A red and white checkered blanket spreads across the grass. A small Weber charcoal grill sits on the designated concrete pad, one of dozens scattered throughout the park specifically for public use. Smoke rises gently from burgers and hot dogs. This is their monthly ritual, the first family barbecue of the season. In the upper left of the frame, Jennifer Schulte, 43, a pharmaceutical sales representative from the neighboring suburb of Piedmont. White, blonde, wearing yoga pants and a fitted athletic jacket. Her face is tight with what she clearly believes is righteous indignation. She's been standing there for 23 minutes. The confrontation didn't start with the camera rolling. It started 30 minutes earlier, when Jennifer was walking her small white dog along the lake path. She saw the Smithson family setting up their grill. She stopped walking. She stared. Then she approached. According to witnesses who would later give statements, Jennifer's first words were not a polite inquiry. They were an accusation. You can't use charcoal grills here. This is a non-charcoal area.
Javon looked up from arranging the coals.
his face showing the patient exhaustion of someone who'd had this exact conversation before, in different contexts. Actually, ma'am, we checked the park regulations. Charcoal grills are permitted in this section. We even called the Parks Department yesterday to confirm. Jennifer's jaw tightened. I've been coming to this park for 15 years. I know the rules. Michelle stepped forward, her voice calm but firm. We have the permit information on our phone if you'd like to see it. We're following all posted regulations. This is the moment where most people would apologize, feel embarrassed, and walk away. Jennifer doubled down. You're making the whole area smoky. You're disturbing other families. This is inappropriate. The camera, being filmed by another park visitor named Caitlin Wu, a 24-year-old grad student who'd been watching the interaction escalate, catches this moment. Caitlin would later say in interviews that something about Jennifer's tone, her body language, the way she was hovering over this black family with aggressive authority, triggered her instinct to document. The video shows Jennifer with her phone pressed to her ear. Her free hand gestures sharply at the Smithson family. Yes, I need someone from Oakland Parks to come immediately. There's a family using an illegal grill and they're refusing to leave. Javon stands up, brushing charcoal dust from his hands. He's 6'2", broad-shouldered, and his mere act of standing seems to make Jennifer step back and speak louder into her phone. Ma'am, Javon says, his voice carrying the careful modulation of a black man who knows any display of emotion will be weaponized against him. We're not leaving. We have every right to be here. We have a permit. We paid the reservation fee. We're using a designated grill area. Jennifer's response is caught clearly on camera. People like you always think rules don't apply to them. At this moment, what would you have said to her? I want to hear it. The comment lands like a slap. Michelle's face hardens. Javon's hands curl into fists at his sides, then deliberately relax. Both of them understand exactly what people like you means.
Caitlin moves closer, her phone camera now clearly visible. Other park visitors begin to notice the commotion. A small crowd starts to form, not surrounding the family, but creating a loose perimeter of witnesses. Jennifer notices the cameras. Instead of deterring her, it seems to embolden her. She's convinced she's in the right, convinced she's protecting the park, convinced her 15 years of weekend walks give her authority over people who followed every rule. She calls 911. The audio on Caitlin's video captures fragments of the call. Yes, I'm at Lake Merritt. There's a family having an illegal barbecue. They're using charcoal in a non-charcoal zone. They're being aggressive and refusing to comply. That last part, being aggressive, is demonstrably false. The video shows the Smithson family standing near the grill, not approaching Jennifer, not raising their voices, simply existing in the space they paid to reserve. A park ranger vehicle pulls up. Ranger Michael Torres, a 15-year veteran of Oakland Parks and Recreation, steps out. He's Latino, early 40s, and his body language immediately suggests he's exhausted before this conversation even begins. What's the problem here? Torres asks, his voice neutral. Jennifer rushes toward him, her words tumbling over each other. They're using an illegal charcoal grill. They're creating smoke. They won't leave. I've told them multiple times they're breaking the rules. Torres holds up one hand. Ma'am, let me check the situation. He walks to the Smithson family. Javon already has his phone out, showing the permit confirmation email and the park map highlighting designated charcoal grill zones. Torres examines it for maybe 15 seconds. Then he turns back to Jennifer. Ma'am, this family is in compliance with all park regulations. Charcoal grills are permitted in this section. They have a valid reservation. There's no violation here. Jennifer's face flushes red. That can't be right. I've been coming here for years. The regulations were updated 3 years ago. Charcoal grills are now allowed in designated zones. This is one of them. These folks have done everything correctly. This is the moment where most people would apologize and leave. Jennifer escalates.
Then I want to file a formal complaint. They're still creating a disturbance. They're being hostile. I don't feel safe. The video captures Javon's face. He's not angry. He's not surprised. He looks tired. The bone-deep tired of someone who's played this scene 100 times in 100 different contexts. Michelle puts her hand on his arm. The children have stopped playing and moved closer to their parents, confused and frightened by the white woman who won't stop yelling. If you were the Smithson family, would you stay and finish your barbecue or pack up and leave to avoid further confrontation? Torres turns to Jennifer, his voice dropping to a tone that suggests this is his final word on the matter. Ma'am, there's no complaint to file. They're not violating any regulations. You've been here for, he checks his watch, over half an hour, arguing about rules that don't exist. I'm asking you to move along and let this family enjoy their afternoon. Jennifer's expression shifts. The righteous indignation hardens into something uglier. Fine, I'll wait for the police. And she does. For another hour and 47 minutes. What happens next becomes the surreal heart of the story. Jennifer doesn't leave. She positions herself approximately 20 feet from the Smithson family and waits. She's called 911 3 times now. Each call is logged. Each dispatcher has told her that unless there's an actual emergency or violation, police response will be low priority. But Jennifer waits anyway. The Smithson family faces an impossible choice. They can leave, abandon their permitted space, their paid reservation, their family tradition, and let this woman's harassment succeed, or they can stay and continue their barbecue while a white woman glares at them and multiple cameras document the absurdity of this situation. They choose to stay. Michelle flips the burgers. Javon tends the grill. The children, sensing their parents' tension but trying to maintain normalcy, sit on the blanket coloring with sidewalk chalk. More phones come out. More witnesses start recording. The crowd swells to nearly 30 people, most of them expressing support for the Smithson family, some offering them water and snacks in solidarity. One witness, a white man in his 50s named Robert Chen, approaches Jennifer. Ma'am, you need to let this go. These people haven't done anything wrong. You are harassing a black family for having a barbecue. Jennifer wheels on him. This isn't about race. I would do this to anyone breaking the rules. But they're not breaking the rules, Robert says, his voice rising. A park ranger already confirmed they're in compliance. What are you really upset about? Jennifer's face crumples and hardens simultaneously. She doesn't answer. She just keeps waiting. At 1:34 p.m., 2 hours and 14 minutes after Jennifer first approached the Smithson family, 2 Oakland police officers arrive. Should filing false 911 calls about people following all regulations carry criminal consequences? Drop your answer below.
Officers Denise Ramirez and James Wu step out of their patrol car with the visible demeanor of people who've already been briefed on exactly how ridiculous this call is. Dispatch has logged Jennifer's multiple calls. The Rangers have radioed in their assessment. The officers know before they arrive that there's no violation, no crime, no legitimate reason for their presence. But they're here anyway because Jennifer has weaponized their authority. Officer Ramirez approaches Jennifer first. Ma'am, you called about an illegal barbecue? Yes! Jennifer's voice carries relief and vindication. They've been here for hours, using a charcoal grill in a prohibited zone, creating smoke, being hostile. Ramirez holds up one hand, cutting her off mid-sentence. Ma'am, we've already confirmed with Park Services that this family is in compliance with all regulations. They have a valid permit. They're in a designated charcoal grill zone. There's no violation. Jennifer's mouth opens and closes. But I've been coming here for 15 years. The regulations changed, Officer Wu interjects, his tone flat and professional, but with an edge of impatience. You've been told this multiple times by multiple people, including a park ranger. You've made 3 911 calls about a non-emergency situation. Do you understand that's a misuse of emergency services? The blood drains from Jennifer's face. Around them, phones continue recording. Caitlin's video, which has now been running for over an hour with brief interruptions, captures the moment when Jennifer realizes she's not the hero of this story. Officer Ramirez turns to the Smithson family. Folks, I apologize for the disruption to your afternoon. You're welcome to continue your barbecue. You haven't done anything wrong. Javon nods slowly. Thank you, officer. We appreciate that. Ramirez turns back to Jennifer. Ma'am, you need to leave this area immediately. If you continue to harass this family, we can cite you for disturbing the peace. Harass? Jennifer's voice pitches up. I'm trying to enforce the rules. I'm protecting the pork. You're harassing a black family having a permitted barbecue, Officer Wu says, no longer maintaining professional neutrality. And you've wasted 2 hours of Park Service's time and police resources because you couldn't accept that you were wrong. Jennifer's face contorts. This is discrimination. You're taking their side because they're right and you're wrong, Ramirez snaps. Leave, now, or we'll cite you. Jennifer grabs her dog's leash and storms away, her face red, her hands shaking. She's muttering loud enough for nearby cameras to catch. This is unbelievable. This is what's wrong with this city. No one follows rules anymore. She doesn't know it yet, but Caitlin's video is already uploading to Twitter with the caption, "White woman calls cops on black family having a legal barbecue at Lake Merritt. This is #BarbecueBecky." Within 3 hours, it will have 400,000 views. Within 24 hours, it will have 12 million.
The internet works fast. By sunset on April 29th, Jennifer Schulte's face is everywhere. Twitter, Facebook, Instagram, Reddit, national news websites. The hashtag BBQBecky trends worldwide. Late-night talk shows prepare segments. Memes proliferate faster than Jennifer's employers can draft a response. The video evidence is damning because it's comprehensive. Multiple angles from multiple witnesses show Jennifer approaching unprovoked. The Smithson family calmly explaining their permit. Jennifer refusing to accept the park ranger's confirmation. Jennifer waiting for 2 hours despite being told repeatedly she was wrong. Police arriving and immediately siding with the family. Jennifer's complete inability to admit error. The court of public opinion moves swiftly. Commentary pours in from civil rights organizations, cultural critics, everyday people who see themselves in the Smithson family's experience. This is what black families face constantly, scrutinized, questioned, policed for doing everyday activities white families do without a second thought. She couldn't conceive that a black family followed the rules better than she understood them. The entitlement to call armed police on children eating hot dogs because you don't think they belong. Jennifer's employer, a mid-sized pharmaceutical company, issues a statement within 36 hours. We are aware of the incident involving our employee. We're investigating and will respond appropriately. We do not condone harassment or discrimination in any form. Corporate language. Careful. Non-committal. But the pressure doesn't stop. Customers threaten boycotts. Employees express discomfort working alongside Jennifer. The company's social media accounts are flooded with demands for her termination.
Jennifer tries to defend herself. She releases a statement through a friend's Facebook account. I was trying to protect the park I've loved for years. I wasn't trying to discriminate against anyone. I would have done the same thing regardless of race. People are taking this out of context and destroying my life over a misunderstanding. The statement backfires spectacularly. You spent 2 hours harassing a family with children. Where's the misunderstanding? Regardless of race is what every racist says right before explaining why they only call cops on black people. You had multiple people tell you they were right and you were wrong, and you still called 911 3 times. That's not concern, that's hatred.
Oakland's mayor, Libby Schaaf, weighs in during a press conference about an unrelated issue. A reporter asks about the BBQBecky incident. What happened to that family is unacceptable, Schaaf says firmly. Lake Merritt is a public space that belongs to everyone. Weaponizing police against black families doing exactly what they're supposed to be doing, following permits, Following rules, simply existing, is a manifestation of the bias we're working to eliminate in Oakland.
Should footage like this always be made public? Comment below. But this isn't an isolated incident, and the narrator's voice shifts to provide the broader context that explains why #BBQBecky resonated so powerfully. In the 6 months before the Lake Merritt incident, similar viral videos had documented white people calling police on black people for a black real estate investor inspecting a property he owned, a neighbor called police for suspicious activity, a black family using a community pool they had membership to, a white woman demanded to see their access cards, a black college student napping in her own dorm room common room, a white student called police for trespassing, a black child selling water on a sidewalk without a permit, a white woman called police on an 8-year-old, a black family checking out of an Airbnb they'd rented, a white neighbor called police for burglary. The pattern was undeniable. White people wielding police as weapons to remove black people from spaces, public parks, private pools, college dorms, residential neighborhoods, based purely
on the assumption that black presence equals criminal activity. Researchers at Stanford University studying these incidents coined a term, participation policing, the act of using law enforcement to police who gets to participate in public life. Dr. Sean Harper, executive director of the USC Race and Equity Center, explained in an interview following the BBQ Becky incident. These aren't isolated acts of individual prejudice. They're manifestations of systemic racism that teaches white people they have the authority to determine who belongs in shared spaces, and they're dangerous because they can escalate to violence. Every call to police on a black person doing nothing illegal is a potential death sentence. The statistics support this. Research from the Cato Institute found that between 2010 and 2016, black Americans were 2.5 times more likely than white Americans to be killed by police, and a significant percentage of those encounters began with calls about non-criminal activity, wellness checks, traffic stops, reports of suspicious behavior that turned out to be everyday life. The Smithson family understood this viscerally. When Jennifer made her first 911 call, Jevin told Michelle, "We stay calm, we stay polite. We don't give them any excuse," because they knew what Jennifer either didn't know or didn't care about. Her phone call could have gotten them killed. Within 1 week of the incident, multiple investigations were underway. Oakland Police Department opened an internal review of Jennifer's 3 911 calls. California law prohibits knowingly filing false reports with law enforcement, and the department needed to determine whether Jennifer's calls met that threshold. The review pulled the dispatch recordings. All 3 calls contained false or misleading information. Call number 1, they're using an illegal grill and refusing to leave. False, the grill was legal and they had no obligation to leave. Call number 2, they're being aggressive and creating a dangerous situation. False, video evidence shows no aggression whatsoever. And call number 3, I need police here immediately. I don't feel safe. Manipulative, Jennifer felt unsafe because she was told she was wrong, not because of any threatening behavior. California Penal Code 148.3 makes it a misdemeanor to falsely report a crime or emergency knowing the report to be false. The penalty can include up to 6 months in jail and a fine of up to $1,000.
But prosecution requires proving Jennifer knew her claims were false. Her defense would likely be, "I genuinely believed they were violating regulations." The fact that a park ranger explicitly told her otherwise would undermine that defense. Oakland City Attorney Barbara Parker reviewed the case and made a calculated decision. Rather than pursue criminal charges that might not stick and would consume significant prosecutorial resources, her office issued Jennifer a formal citation for misuse of emergency services, a lesser infraction carrying a $500 fine and mandatory completion of a community education program. Jennifer's employer made their own calculation. On May 7th, 9 days after the incident, they announced her termination. Quote,
After thorough review, we've determined that Ms. Schulte's actions are incompatible with our company values of inclusion, respect, and community responsibility. Her employment has been terminated effective immediately." Unquote. Jennifer didn't go quietly. Through her attorney, she threatened a wrongful termination lawsuit claiming she was fired for exercising her rights as a concerned citizen. The company's legal team responded with a detailed documentation package showing customer complaints specifically citing discomfort with her employment, employee complaints about hostile work environment, company policy violations regarding conduct reflecting negatively on the organization, at-will employment status giving them broad discretion. The lawsuit threat evaporated. Jennifer's Homeowners Association in Piedmont also took action. Following complaints from multiple residents and national media attention focusing on their community, the HOA board issued a formal censure and launched an investigation into whether Jennifer's behavior violated community conduct standards. The investigation findings, released publicly due to media pressure, were scathing. Quote, "Ms. Schulte's actions demonstrated prejudice, poor judgment, and abuse of emergency services. While this incident occurred outside our community, it reflects on our neighborhood's values and reputation. The board has unanimously voted to place Ms. Schulte on social probation and require completion of implicit bias training." Unquote. Social probation meant Jennifer couldn't participate in community events, use shared amenities, or serve on any HOA committees for 1 year. For a woman who'd built her identity around being an upstanding community member, the public rebuke was devastating. Do you think she should have lost her job for this? Drop your answer in the comments.
2 weeks after the incident, the Smithson family held a press conference at Lake Merritt, in the same spot where they'd been harassed. Javon and Michelle stood at a podium with their attorneys from the ACLU of Northern California. Their children were not present. The family had made a deliberate choice to shield Kayla and Marcus from further media exposure. Javon spoke first, his voice steady but weighted with emotion. "On April 29th, my family went to a public park to have a barbecue. We did everything right. We researched the regulations, we made a reservation, we paid the fee, we brought all required documentation, we chose a designated grill area, we followed every single rule. And we were still treated like criminals. Not because we did anything wrong, but because a woman looked at our black family and decided we didn't belong. She couldn't imagine that we'd followed the rules better than she understood them. She couldn't accept that a park ranger, police officers, and dozens of witnesses all confirmed we were right and she was wrong. She spent 2 hours trying to force us out of a space we had every legal right to occupy. And she weaponized 911 to do it." He paused, his jaw tightening. "People keep asking me, why didn't you just leave? Why stay and deal with her harassment? Because leaving would mean teaching my children that they don't belong in public spaces. That when white people question their right to exist somewhere, the correct response is to shrink, to apologize, to disappear. I will not teach my children that. My son is 6 years old. My daughter is 8. They need to see their father stand firm when someone tries to diminish us. They need to learn that we have rights, that we deserve dignity, and that we don't back down when we've done nothing wrong." Michelle took the microphone next. "I'm a teacher. I spend my days telling young people that the world is getting better, that equality is expanding, that education and kindness will overcome prejudice. And then I spend my Saturday getting harassed at a park barbecue. What happened to us happens to black families constantly. We get followed in stores, we get questioned in our own neighborhoods, we get police called on us for existing. When my daughter asked me why that woman was so angry at us, what was I supposed to say? Some people think our skin color makes us criminals even when we're eating hot dogs? That's a conversation no parent should have to have, but it's one black parents have every single day. Jennifer Schulte lost her job. She paid a fine. She got internet famous for being racist. Good. Maybe that will make the next person think twice before calling 911 on a black family doing nothing wrong.
But accountability for one woman doesn't fix the system that taught her we were threats in the first place. Their attorney, civil rights lawyer James Kwan, spoke last. The Smithson family has asked me to make clear they're not pursuing civil litigation against Ms. Schultz. They could. They have grounds for harassment claims, emotional distress, violation of civil rights, but they've chosen a different path. They're working with civil rights organizations to develop training programs for parks departments, police, and 911 dispatchers specifically focused on recognizing and de-escalating bias-motivated calls. They're partnering with the ACLU to draft model legislation increasing penalties for false 911 reports that target people based on race. And they're turning their experience into education, speaking to community groups and schools about implicit bias and the real-world consequences of participation policing. Their goal isn't revenge, it's change. What part of the Smithson family's message hits you the hardest? Comment below. The immediate aftermath played out over the following months. Jennifer Schulte completed her court-mandated community education program, a 16-hour course on implicit bias, cultural competency, and the history of weaponized police calls against Black Americans. According to the program coordinator, she attended but participated minimally, her body language suggesting resentment rather than reflection. She completed her HOA-required training as well, but by September 2018, 5 months after the incident, she listed her Piedmont home for sale. Real estate records show she purchased a property in a smaller town 90 miles north of Oakland shortly after. She attempted to rebuild her career in pharmaceutical sales, but found the Barbecue Becky label followed her. LinkedIn profiles, Google searches, background checks. Prospective employers found the videos, read the articles, and decided the liability outweighed her sales experience. As of 2024, public records suggest she works in an administrative role at a medical clinic, far from the public-facing position she once held. The Smithson family had their own reckoning. They returned to Lake Merritt for barbecues, but Javon installed security cameras at their home after receiving threatening messages from people who believed Jennifer had been treated unfairly. Michelle started carrying mace when she took the kids to the park. The psychological toll was real. Kayla developed anxiety about going to public spaces. Marcus asked his parents if they could just barbecue in the backyard instead. The family sought counseling to process the trauma of being criminalized for doing something completely ordinary. But they also channeled their experience into activism. They partnered with the ACLU, the NAACP, and local Oakland organizations to create the Living While Black Education Initiative, a program bringing their story and others like it into schools, police academies, and corporate diversity trainings. The video of their harassment became a teaching tool, not for entertainment, but for education. The Oakland Parks Department revised its signage to make grill regulations clearer and more visible. They also implemented new training for rangers, specifically on recognizing and interrupting bias-motivated complaints. Oakland Police Department added a module to dispatcher training on assessing the legitimacy of suspicious activity calls, with specific attention to patterns suggesting racial bias. Dispatchers now ask additional questions when callers report non-criminal behavior and flag repeat callers who demonstrate concerning patterns. And California State Senator Scott Wiener introduced the Karen Act, a caution against racially exploitative non-emergencies, in 2020, making it explicitly illegal to make false racially motivated 911 calls. The legislation was inspired directly by incidents like Barbecue Becky and similar viral confrontations. The bill passed and became law, creating specific legal consequences for weaponizing emergency services based on racial bias. Do you think justice was served? Let me know in the comments.
Wake up, buddy. Sleeping out here lands you in jail today.
Been walking all night. Just needed a minute to breathe, man.
Did I ask? I said, get the hell up.
This is exactly why Americans hate cops nowadays. Undercover police chief, you're fired.
On a clear spring morning in Stonebrook City Park, a rookie officer made a mistake that would derail his career and expose a deeper systemic failure inside his department. Officer Tyler Knox, 24 years old, barely 6 weeks out of the academy, had been assigned to morning patrol and quality of life enforcement, a role typically reserved for officers trusted to exercise discretion and compassion. But at 7:43 a.m., his body camera captured him towering over a black man sitting quietly on a brightly colored metal bench, treating him with open mockery and hostility. Knox believed the man was homeless. He believed he was powerless. He believed he could treat him however he wanted. But the man he harassed was actually the department's own undercover chief of internal affairs, conducting a scheduled integrity test on new recruits. Within hours, Knox's behavior would spark a scandal that ended his employment and triggered a citywide investigation. Before we continue, where are you watching from? If this is your first time here, please hit subscribe. Stories like these need to be shared, and your support helps us bring more truth to light.
Tyler Knox grew up in Mercer Falls, a town with one stoplight and a population that barely cracked 4,000. His father had been a sergeant with the county sheriff's office for 23 years. His grandfather had been a state trooper. Law enforcement wasn't just a career in the Knox family. It was identity, legacy, expectation. Tyler wore his badge the way some people wear their last name, with pride that bordered on entitlement. At 24, Knox was the youngest officer in Stonebrook's 2024 Spring Academy class. His instructors described him as eager but emotionally immature. His field training reports noted strong technical skills. He could recite penal codes, execute traffic stops by the book, and handle firearms with precision. But his interpersonal evaluations told a different story. One supervisor wrote, "Knox treats policing like a competition he's trying to win." Another wrote, "Knox treats policing like a competition he's trying to win." The academy graduated him anyway. Stonebrook Police Department was short-staffed, operating at 72% capacity after budget cuts and a wave of retirements. Warm bodies with clean backgrounds and passing scores were prioritized over ideal temperament. Tyler Knox received his badge on a Friday. By Monday morning, he was patrolling alone. His assignment, downtown quality of life enforcement. That meant monitoring parks, transit hubs, and commercial districts for violations that fell into a gray area between criminal and civil: loitering, panhandling, public intoxication, sleeping in unauthorized areas. It was a role that required discretion, compassion, and the ability to distinguish between someone causing harm and someone simply existing in public space while poor, mentally ill, or unhoused. Tyler Knox possessed none of those qualities. What Knox didn't know, what almost no one in the department knew, was that Stonebrook Police Department had been running undercover integrity evaluations for the past 18 months. The program had been quietly implemented after a series of excessive force complaints and a Department of Justice consent decree that mandated reforms in accountability and training. Every 2 weeks, Internal Affairs deployed clothes officers into scenarios designed to test judgment, de-escalation skills, and compassion. Sometimes it was a staged domestic dispute. Sometimes it was a traffic stop with an actor playing an aggressive driver. Sometimes it was exactly what happened that Tuesday morning. A senior officer disguised as a vulnerable civilian placed in a public location waiting to see how patrol officers would respond. The tests weren't traps, they were mirrors. Officers who approached with professionalism, offered resources, and treated people with dignity passed without ever knowing they'd been evaluated. Officers who defaulted to intimidation, mockery, or force revealed exactly who they were when they thought no one important was watching. Only 3 people knew the schedule: the chief of police, the deputy chief of operations, and the head of internal affairs. Rookie officers were prioritized for testing because the department had learned a hard truth. Bad habits formed early were nearly impossible to break later. Tyler Knox's test was scheduled for April 16th at 7:30 a.m. in Stonebrook City Park.
Captain Elijah Ward was 52 years old and had spent the last 11 years running internal affairs for Stonebrook PD. Before that, he'd worked narcotics, gang enforcement, and homicide. He'd been shot twice, decorated 4 times, and respected universally. Not because he was soft, but because he was fair. Ward didn't play politics. He didn't cover for bad cops. He investigated complaints with the same rigor whether they involved a rookie or a deputy chief, and he'd personally recommended termination for 17 officers during his tenure. Ward was also black. That detail mattered because it shaped how he understood the stakes of integrity testing. He knew what it felt like to be profiled, to be treated as suspicious simply for existing in certain spaces. He knew the difference between an officer who genuinely couldn't tell the difference between a threat and a person, and an officer who simply didn't care. On the morning of April 16th, Ward arrived at Stonebrook City Park at 6:45 a.m. He wore layers of weathered clothing, a faded brown jacket with a torn pocket, dark jeans stained at the knees, scuffed work boots with the laces frayed. His graying hair was unkempt. He hadn't shaved in 3 days. A worn canvas backpack sat beside him on the bench, the kind you'd see at a thrift store or a shelter donation bin. He looked tired. He looked forgotten. He looked exactly like the kind of person some officers believed didn't deserve courtesy. The bench he chose was painted bright blue, positioned along the main walking path near the park's east entrance. It faced a small pond where ducks gathered in the mornings. Joggers passed every few minutes. Dog walkers, early commuters cutting through on their way to the bus stop. The park was peaceful, bathed in soft daylight that filtered through oak trees just beginning to bloom. Ward sat with his head tilted back, eyes half closed, postures suggesting exhaustion rather than aggression. His body language was deliberately non-threatening. He wasn't drinking, he wasn't shouting, he wasn't bothering anyone. He was simply sitting, resting, existing in a public park during hours when the park was legally open to everyone. 3 surveillance cameras monitored the area. Internal Affairs had positioned 2 additional plainclothes officers nearby, one disguised as a jogger, another sitting in a parked car with a clear sightline. Ward's Bodycam was concealed inside the canvas backpack, lens angled toward the bench. Every angle was covered. Every word would be recorded. Every action would be documented. At 7:41 a.m., Officer Tyler Knox's patrol car pulled into the parking lot. Stonebrook City Park covered 42 acres of green space in the heart of downtown. It had been designed in the 1920s as a refuge from urban density. Winding paths, open lawns, clusters of trees, a central fountain that ran from April through October. By 7:30 on a Tuesday morning, the park belonged to the early risers. A woman in neon running shoes jogged past Ward's bench, earbuds in, barely glancing his direction. An older man walked a golden retriever that stopped to sniff the grass near the pond. A teenager on a skateboard carved lazy circles around the fountain, waiting for his school bus. The air smelled like fresh-cut grass and damp earth. Birds called from the branches overhead. The fountain's water created a low, steady hum. It was the kind of morning that made you believe the world could be gentle. Ward heard Knox's patrol car before he saw it. The engine idled louder than necessary as it rolled slowly along the service road that curved through the park. Ward didn't turn his head. He kept his eyes half closed, his breathing slow and even, his posture suggesting someone too exhausted to care about much beyond the next few minutes of rest. The car stopped 30 feet away. Ward heard the door open, heard boots hit pavement, heard the deliberate, unhurried steps of someone who believed they owned the space they walked through.
Knox approached the bench with his chest out, shoulders squared, one hand resting on his duty belt near his radio. His body cam activated automatically when he exited the vehicle, a small red light blinking once before settling into steady recording mode. The camera captured everything from Knox's perspective: the bright blue bench, the canvas backpack, the man in worn clothing sitting motionless in the morning light.
Knox stopped 6 feet away and studied Ward for several seconds. His expression was neutral, but his eyes were already making assessments, drawing conclusions, deciding who this person was and whether they deserved respect. Ward clocked him instantly, noticed the rookie confidence, the slight swagger, the way Knox stood like he was waiting for applause. Ward had seen 1,000 officers like this, young men who believed authority was something you performed rather than something you earned, men who mistook cruelty for strength and compliance for respect. The tension was already present, humming beneath the surface like voltage waiting for connection. Knox shifted his weight, cleared his throat, and spoke. What do you think Knox's real issue is? Ego, bias, or the pressure of proving himself? Knox's voice cut through the morning quiet, sharp and performative. Wake up, buddy. Sleeping out here will land you in jail today. Ward didn't move immediately. He let the words hang in the air for 3 seconds, long enough for Knox to be uncomfortable, long enough to establish that he wasn't going to respond to commands delivered like insults. Then he opened his eyes fully, turned his head slowly toward Knox, and spoke with the kind of calm that comes from absolute certainty. I'm not hurting anybody, just trying to rest. His voice was measured, deliberate, and completely devoid of fear. It was the voice of someone who knew exactly where this was going and had already decided how it would end. Knox didn't hear the warning. He heard defiance. This ain't a hotel, man. You can't just camp out here whenever you feel like it. Knox stepped closer, narrowing the distance to 4 feet. His right hand moved from his belt to his hip, fingers drumming against his thigh, in a gesture that suggested impatience barely held in check. You got ID? Ward tilted his head slightly, as if considering the question from multiple angles. Am I being detained? Knox's jaw tightened. Don't start with that legal stuff. I'm asking you a simple question. Do you have identification? And I'm asking you a simple question. Am I being detained or am I free to go? Knox took another step forward. Now he was 3 feet away, looming over Ward, using his height and proximity as tools of intimidation. His body cam captured the angle perfectly, Knox's shadow falling across Ward's face, the physical imbalance, the deliberate invasion of personal space.
Ward didn't flinch, didn't blink, didn't give Knox the reaction he was fishing for. He simply sat, hands resting on his knees, expression calm, and said, I'm not required to provide identification unless you have reasonable suspicion that I've committed a crime. Have I committed a crime, officer? Knox's face flushed. His hand moved to his radio. You're about 2 seconds away from finding out what obstruction looks like. Obstruction, Ward repeated, slowly, as if tasting the word. For sitting on a bench in a public park during open hours. Interesting interpretation of the law. Knox's breathing quickened. His fingers twitched near his belt. The body cam captured his hand hovering near his taser, the yellow casing visible in the frame for just a moment before he caught himself and adjusted his stance. You think you're smart? Knox said, his voice dropping into something colder, meaner. You think because you know a couple legal terms you can sit here and waste my time? I'm not wasting your time, Ward said evenly. You approached me. I was sitting here quietly. You're the one who decided this needed to be a confrontation. Knox's hand went back to his taser. This time, he didn't move it away. The escalation. Stand up, Knox ordered, his voice tight with barely controlled anger. Stand up right now. Ward didn't move. His eyes stayed locked on Knox's face, reading every micro-expression, cataloging every tell. He'd been a cop long enough to recognize the signs: elevated heart rate, shallow breathing, pupils dilated with adrenaline. Knox was spiraling, feeding his own anger, building to something he thought would prove his authority. I said stand up. Knox's voice cracked slightly, betraying the edge of panic beneath the aggression. He was losing control of the situation and couldn't figure out why. The man on the bench wasn't running, wasn't fighting, wasn't even raising his voice. But somehow, Knox felt like he was the one being cornered. Am I under arrest? Ward asked, his tone still maddeningly calm. You're about to be if you don't... On what charge? Knox closed around the grip of his taser. Trespassing, obstruction, disorderly conduct, pick one. I'm sitting on a public bench in a public park during daylight hours. None of those charges would survive 10 minutes in court, and you know it. I don't give a damn what you think you know, Knox shouted, his composure finally shattering. His hand pulled the taser halfway out of its holster, yellow plastic gleaming in the morning sun. You're gonna stand up, you're gonna show me your ID, and you're gonna do it right now, or I swear to God. Or what? Ward interrupted, his voice cutting through Knox's tirade like a blade. You'll tase a man for sitting on a bench? You'll arrest someone for exercising their constitutional rights? Is that the kind of officer you want to be?
Knox's entire body was trembling now, caught between the urge to escalate and the faint, distant alarm bell ringing in the back of his mind that told him something about this didn't feel right. But his pride, his ego, his desperate need to win this confrontation drowned out that warning. "Get the hell up!" Knox roared, his face inches from Ward's now, spittle flying with the force of his words. "You think I'm playing?" The jogger who'd passed earlier had stopped 30 feet away, phone out, recording. The man with the golden retriever had frozen mid-step, staring. The teenager on the skateboard had abandoned his board and was watching with wide eyes. Knox didn't notice any of them. His entire world had narrowed to the man on the bench who refused to be intimidated, refused to comply, refused to give him the victory he thought he deserved. Ward looked up at Knox. His expression shifted, not to fear, not to anger, but to something harder, something final. "Glad you finally showed your true colors," Ward said quietly. He reached into his jacket. Knox's hand flew to his taser, yanking it free, his finger on the trigger, Bodycam capturing every millisecond of the movement. And then Ward pulled out a gold badge. Not a wallet, not a weapon, not anything Knox's panicked mind had imagined. A badge. Gold. Engraved. Official. Ward's held it directly into the Bodycam's frame, angling it so the lens caught every detail. The shield, the eagle, the words stamped across the metal in bold letters. Ward's voice dropped to something quiet, measured, and devastating. "Undercover police chief, congratulations, you're fired." The collapse. Knox's face went white, not pale, white, the kind of bloodless white that happens when your brain suddenly understands that everything you thought was true is actually a catastrophic mistake. His hand, still holding the taser, began to shake. The weapon dipped, then dropped to his side, hanging useless from fingers that had gone numb. His mouth opened, but no sound came out. His eyes, wide, frantic, disbelieving, locked onto the badge, then flicked to Ward's face, then back to the badge, as if staring harder might somehow change what he was seeing. Knox's voice cracked. I didn't. Ward stood slowly, deliberately, pocketing the badge and stepping past Knox without another word. His movement was unhurried, almost casual, the kind of calm that comes from having complete control over the situation and zero doubt about the outcome.
Knox turned, stumbling slightly, watching Ward walk toward the park entrance. "Sir, wait, I can explain." Ward didn't turn around. He pulled a radio from inside his jacket, a real radio, department issued, not the civilian prop Knox had assumed he didn't have, and keyed the mic. "Command, this is Captain Ward. Integrity test complete. Requesting supervisor response to Stonebrook City Park East entrance. Officer requires immediate removal from duty." His voice was professional, clinical, empty of emotion. He wasn't angry. He wasn't disappointed. He was simply reporting facts, the way you'd report a malfunctioning piece of equipment that needed to be taken offline. Knox's legs buckled. He caught himself against the bench, Bodycam shaking with the movement, frame wobbling as he fought to stay upright. His breathing came in short, rapid gasps. His hands trembled so badly he had to clasp them together to stop the shaking. The jogger with the phone was still recording. The man with the dog stood frozen, mouth slightly open. The teenager whispered something to someone on his phone, voice hushed and awed. Dude, you're not going to believe what just happened. Knox tried to speak again. Captain, please, I thought... Ward finally stopped walking. He turned, looked back at Knox with an expression that held no sympathy, no forgiveness, nothing but the cold assessment of someone who'd seen exactly what he needed to see. You thought he was powerless. You thought he was someone you could treat however you wanted because nobody would care. That's the problem, Officer Knox. That's always been the problem. He turned and kept walking. Knox sank onto the bench, the same bright blue bench where Ward had been sitting moments earlier, and buried his face in his hands. The Bodycam kept recording. The birds kept singing. The fountain kept running. And Tyler Knox's career, all 6 weeks of it, was over.
2 patrol cars arrived within 4 minutes. Sergeant Rachel Odom and Sergeant Marcus Tillman, both 15-year veterans, both aware of the integrity testing program's existence, even if they didn't know the schedule. They stepped out of their vehicles with expressions that told Knox everything he needed to know. This wasn't a rescue. This was a retrieval. Odom approached first. She was 42, compact and no-nonsense, with sharp eyes that missed nothing. She'd worked with Knox during his field training rotation and had flagged him then for attitude issues. Her notes had been ignored. "Officer Knox," she said, her voice flat and official, "I need your service weapon, your badge, and your body cam, right now." Knox looked up, his face streaked with tears. He hadn't realized he'd been crying. "Sergeant, I didn't know—" "Weapon, badge, camera." Odom's hand extended, palm up, finger steady. "This isn't a conversation." Knox's hands fumbled with his duty belt. He unholstered his Glock 19 with shaking fingers, ejected the magazine, cleared the chamber, and handed it over, grip first. Then his badge, the metal still warm from his body heat. Then the body cam, its red light still blinking, still recording the moment of his professional execution. Odom took each item without comment and passed them to Tillman, who placed them in evidence bags with the kind of clinical precision that made the whole scene feel like a crime scene, which, in a way, it was. "Stand up. You're going to walk to Sergeant Tillman's vehicle. You're going to sit in the back seat. You're not under arrest, but you're not free to leave. Internal Affairs is en route. Do you understand?" Knox nodded, mute, broken. "I need verbal confirmation, Officer Knox." "I understand," he whispered. Tillman opened the rear door of his patrol car. Knox climbed in, moving like someone in a dream, slow, disconnected, unable to fully process what was happening. The door closed with a heavy thunk that sounded final. Odom keyed her radio. "Dispatch, scene secured, subject contained, awaiting IA. The investigation begins." Captain Ward had moved to the park's east entrance, standing beneath an oak tree with his arms crossed, watching the scene unfold with the detached focus of someone conducting a performance review. 2 plainclothes internal affairs investigators, Detective Lisa Huang and Detective Jerome Foster, had emerged from their observation positions and were now coordinating witness interviews. Huang approached the jogger who'd been recording. "Ma'am, I'm Detective Huang with Internal Affairs. I understand you witnessed the interaction between the officer and the individual on the bench. Would you be willing to provide a statement?" The jogger, mid-30s, wearing a fitness tracker and expensive running shoes, nodded emphatically. "Absolutely. I recorded the whole thing. That cop was completely out of line. The man on the bench wasn't doing anything wrong, and the officer just kept escalating. It was like he wanted a confrontation." "Can you send me that video?" Huang handed her a card with an encrypted submission portal. "We'll need it for the investigation file." "Already uploading it," the jogger said, tapping her phone. "I've seen too many videos of cops abusing people. I'm not letting this one disappear." Foster was interviewing the man with the golden retriever, whose statement mirrored the jogger's. "I've been walking my dog in this park for 8 years. I've seen people sleeping on benches, and I've seen cops handle it a dozen different ways. Most of them just ask if the person needs help or tell them about shelter resources. I've never seen one go full aggro like that. It was disturbing." The teenager with the skateboard had called 3 friends, all of whom were now standing near the fountain, phones out, posting clips to social media with captions like, "Cop threatens homeless man who turns out to be undercover chief," and "Instant karma." The story was already spreading. Ward pulled out his department-issued phone and opened a secure note-taking app. He began typing his preliminary report, his fingers moving with practiced efficiency. Integrity test evaluation. Officer Tyler Knox, number 4475. Date, April 16, 2024. Time, 0748 to 0758. Location, Stonebrook City Park, East Entrance. Test scenario. Vulnerable civilian in public space. Homeless presentation. Evaluator. Captain E. Ward, Internal Affairs. Summary. Officer Knox approached test subject with immediate hostility. No offer of assistance. No attempt to determine need for services. Defaulted to intimidation tactics within 30 seconds of contact. Escalated to threats of arrest and physical force despite subject's calm demeanor and legal compliance. Drew taser in response to non-threatening civilian exercising constitutional rights. Displayed clear bias indicators in language and body language. Failed to recognize de-escalation opportunities. Demonstrated fundamental unsuitability for field duty. Recommendation: immediate termination. Psychological evaluation required before any future law enforcement employment. Flagged for post-decertification review. Ward attached the Bodycam footage, the surveillance camera footage from 3 angles, and the witness statements that were already pouring into the IA database. By the time he finished, the case file was airtight. A black SUV with tinted windows pulled into the parking lot. Deputy Chief of Operations Angela Martinez stepped out, followed by the department's lead attorney, Robert Chen. Both wore expressions that suggested they'd been expecting bad news, but were still disappointed by how bad it actually was. Martinez walked directly to Ward. "How bad?"
Ward handed her his phone, the preliminary report open on the screen. Martinez read in silence, her jaw tightening with each line. When she finished, she closed her eyes and exhaled slowly. 6 weeks, she said quietly. "We gave him a badge 6 weeks ago." "And this is who he was the entire time," Ward replied. "We just caught it early." Chen looked toward the patrol car where Knox sat slumped in the back seat. "He's going to try to appeal. Union will fight for him." "Let them," Ward said. "The footage speaks for itself. We've got body cam, surveillance, and 3 civilian witnesses, all corroborating the same narrative. He approached a peaceful person sitting in a public park and escalated to the point of drawing a weapon because the man wouldn't comply with unlawful orders. There's no defense." Martinez nodded slowly. "I'll notify the chief. He'll want to handle the press conference personally." "Good, because this needs to be loud. If Knox was willing to treat someone he thought was homeless like this, someone he thought had no power, no voice, no ability to fight back, imagine how he would have treated people once he felt comfortable, once he had tenure, once he had a union protecting him." Chen pulled out his tablet and began drafting termination paperwork. "I'll have the separation documents ready within the hour. No severance, no recommendation. Badge surrendered, POST certification flagged." Martinez looked at Ward. "You okay?" Ward shrugged. "I sat on a bench for 20 minutes. Knox is the one whose life just imploded." "That's not what I asked." Ward was quiet for a moment, then said, "I've been black in America for 52 years. I've been a cop for 28. I know what it's like to be on both sides of that interaction. So, yeah, I'm okay. But I'm also tired, because this is the 4th rookie we've tested this year, and Knox is the 2nd one who failed this badly. That's not a training issue. That's a culture issue." Martinez didn't have a response for that, because Ward was right. The phone call. Inside the patrol car, Tyler Knox pulled out his personal cell phone with trembling hands. He scrolled through his contacts until he found the one labeled Dad and pressed call. The phone rang twice before a gruff voice answered. "Tyler, you at work?" Dad, I messed up." "What did you do?" There was this guy in the park. He looked homeless. I thought I was just trying to do my job, and..." "Tyler, what did you do?"
He was internal affairs. It was a test. I didn't know. He had a badge, and I drew my taser, and now they're saying I'm... You drew on a superior officer? His father's voice went cold, flat, the way it did when he was trying to control his anger. You pulled a weapon on someone from internal affairs during an integrity test?